Tonight, the major development in the war in Gaza. Israel's army rescuing 4 hostages, including a woman whose harrowing abduction was seen throughout the world. The hostages, now free after 246 days in captivity, met with cheers as they exited military helicopters. Among them, Noah Argamani, who'd become one of the known faces of the Israeli hostages seen being abducted from a music festival on October 7th, screaming as she was driven off. Now, the emotional reunion with her father and her mother, who's suffering from brain cancer. Israeli forces storming 2 separate locations in central Gaza. The daylight raid leaving a terrible toll. Scores of Palestinians reportedly killed. And late word on the role U.S. intelligence played. President Biden with French President Macron, who called the carnage unacceptable. What the 2 leaders are saying about a possible ceasefire in Gaza and reaffirming support for Ukraine. Marcus Moore reporting from Israel. MaryAlice Park on U.S. involvement. And Mary Bruce traveling with the president. Also tonight, millions at risk with another round of severe weather taking aim at the plains. Plus, unrelenting heat now breaking records in Florida. Our weather team tracking it all. More frightening shark attacks. A woman seriously injured in Hawaii, and the hunt for sharks off the Florida Panhandle after 3 people were bitten. 2 are in critical condition. Breaking news, a crew rescued after a massive ship began taking on water in Lake Superior. New information about a deadly home explosion during a standoff between the homeowner and police. What authorities now say caused the massive blast. No Olympics for Caitlin Clark. The rising WNBA star has reportedly been left off the Team USA roster. And America Strong tonight, the life-changing surprise. A teacher gives a student the ultimate gift.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight.
Good evening. It's great to have you with us on this Saturday. I'm Whit Johnson. As we come on the air tonight, there is renewed joy in Israel. Following the IDF rescue of 4 hostages, the operation and intense air assault taking place in a densely populated area of central Gaza. And it came at a high cost of Palestinian lives. Scores killed, dozens more wounded. The freed hostages include 1 woman and 3 men, all kidnapped from the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. This is video of 26-year-old Noah Argamani as she was taken on that day. It was viewed around the world. After the rescue, Argamani and the others reunited with their loved ones for the first time in 246 days. But in Gaza, the Hamas-run health ministry says women and children are among those killed in the assault. The dead and wounded rushed to hospitals. President Biden monitoring developments from his state visit in France. We have team coverage tonight. Marcus Moore leads us off from Tel Aviv, and a warning: some of these images are disturbing.
Tonight, 4 Israeli hostages are free after deadly daytime raids in Gaza. Those rescued hostages touching down in Israel after 246 days in captivity, waving to cheering crowds now back with their families and friends. The 4 hostages rescued: Noah Argamani, Almog Meir Yan, Andrei Kozlov, and Shlomi Ziv. 25-year-old Argamani was kidnapped at the Nova Music Festival on October 7th. Video of Argamani being taken away from her boyfriend went viral following the Hamas attack. Later seen in captivity in videos circulating online. But after the IDF operation, Israel releasing this video. Noah stepping onto a helicopter wearing a helmet and bulletproof vest. Sometime later at Sheba Hospital in Tel Aviv, this moment. Noah and her father reunited today on his birthday. A kiss on the cheek and a hug. These emotional reunions, scenes repeated for each family. First the warm embrace, and then the tears.
We hugged, and I looked at her, and then we hugged again because I couldn't believe that she's finally here.
President Biden today at a bilateral meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, reacting to the news.
I want to echo President Macron's comments, welcoming the safe rescue of 4 hostages that were returned to their families in Israel.
The IDF saying, quote, intelligence-based operations focused on 2 apartment buildings in Nasrat in central Gaza. In one building, Noah Argamani, and the other 3 hostages in another building 600 feet away. The 4 Israelis moved around multiple times, according to the IDF, sometimes through underground tunnels, the doors to each of their rooms locked. The IDF says planning for the joint operation between the IDF, Israeli security services, and Israeli police started 2 weeks ago and involved strikes from land, air, and sea. 1 member of the Israeli rescue team was killed during the operation. But while news of the rescue prompted spontaneous celebrations in the streets of Israel, in Gaza there was carnage and chaos, and the many dead in the aftermath of Israel's operation. killed and wounded, including children, lying in the streets. The Hamas government media office now says more than 200 people were killed and more than 400 injured during the raids to free those hostages. Israel refuting those numbers, claiming there are fewer than 100 casualties. Hamas calling the operation a massacre, saying the U.S. is, quote, complicit in war crimes committed on the Gaza Strip. The rescue operation comes as negotiations on a potential ceasefire deal appear stalled, while pressure mounts on all sides to secure a ceasefire and bring the hostages home.
Marcus Moore joining us now from Tel Aviv. And Marcus, as Israel celebrates the return of these 4 hostages, what more do we know about the remaining hostages still being held in Gaza?
Well, there have been 2 previous rescues. A total of 7 hostages have been freed in operations by Israel. But right now, there are still 116 hostages being held in Gaza, and 41 of those are believed to be dead. And just a reminder, the Palestinian death toll tonight is 36,801.
Truly a staggering toll with this war. Marcus, thank you. And we're learning more about the American role in the operation. Let's bring in ABC's White House correspondent MaryAlice Park. And MaryAlice, we understand that the U.S. provided advice and intelligence support.
Yeah, exactly. We know that the U.S. has had intelligence teams based there in Israel to help with hostage recovery efforts since right after the attack on October 7th. And we are told that those teams helped with this operation, sharing intelligence, sharing expertise. Now, of course, a big part of their focus has been trying to find those 8 Americans that were taken hostage 8 months ago who are still unaccounted for. It was also interesting today. We saw statements from both the Secretary of State as well as the National Security Advisor really emphasizing and pointing back to that ceasefire and hostage deal that is on the table. It has the backing of the U.S., the G7, leading Arab nations, everyone hoping that deal comes to pass.
MaryAlice Park, thank you. President Biden and French President Macron celebrating the rescue of the Israeli hostages. Macron hosting Biden on a state visit to France. The war in Ukraine also topping the agenda in their meetings. ABC's chief White House correspondent Mary Bruce is traveling with the president.
Standing with the leader of America's oldest ally, President Biden in Paris today, pledging to bring home the hostages held by Hamas.
We won't stop working until all the hostages come home and a ceasefire is reached. That is essential to happen.
As bloody conflicts rage in the Middle East and Eastern Europe, the close ties between the U.S. and France on full display. French President Emmanuel Macron welcoming Biden to an official state visit with a ceremony at the Arc de Triomphe and a military parade down the Champs-Élysées. Biden continuing to mark the 80th anniversary of D-Day, arguing protecting democracy is just as vital now as it was then. Now Biden urging allies to come together to defend Ukraine against Russia.
Putin's not going to stop at Ukraine. It's not just Ukraine. It's about much more than Ukraine. All of Europe will be threatened. We're not going to let that happen.
Biden and Macron have had their differences, at times backing different approaches to both Ukraine and Gaza. But Biden today stressing the world is a safer place when they work together.
And this week we have showed the world once again the power of allies and what we can achieve when we stand together.
President Biden's travels in France continue tomorrow with a visit to a World War I cemetery outside Paris where American troops are buried. It's notable because back in 2018, then President Trump declined to visit the same cemetery, citing bad weather. But later reports claimed Trump described those buried there as suckers and losers. Trump denies ever saying that, but Biden often repeats the story as an example of the stark differences between them.
Mary Bruce traveling with the president. Thank you. And tune into This Week tomorrow morning. Martha Raddatz speaks with National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan about Israel's hostage rescue mission. Now to another round of severe weather taking aim at the plains as record-breaking heat sweeps across the country. Records expected to fall in Florida this weekend. Temperatures climbing into the upper 90s in some places. Let's bring in ABC News meteorologist Samara Theodore. And Samara, how long is this dangerous heat expected to last?
Well, this heat will follow us into the upcoming work week. We can already see the triple digits by Monday, hitting places like Las Vegas again, El Paso 100 on Saturday. Orlando, Florida will be near 100 degrees, not only today, but as we head into tomorrow and Monday. You can take a look at the heat index values here, and you see you factor in the humidity, and it feels much hotter, feeling like 102 in Orlando tomorrow afternoon. Meanwhile, we are tracking severe thunderstorm watches for parts of Kansas, Colorado, and even into Missouri and Arkansas. The biggest threat with these is damaging winds, large hail, and the threat for isolated tornadoes. We're also monitoring the threat for flash flooding, especially in places like Springfield, Missouri, where they could see 3 inches of rain in a small amount of time.
All right, Samara, we know you'll be tracking it tomorrow on GMA as well. Thanks so much.